Now, the question that I would ask you folks, those of you, and I'm sure, I know it doesn't apply to all of you, but those of you who are thinking of a career in social psychology, especially those of you who are already in a graduate program, if I could give you one piece of advice, it would be that you find a person to work with whose style of work, whose style of research, whose style of being as a human being is simpatico with yours, is someone that you can really admire and whose research you really admire, and work as closely with that person as you possibly can. And it doesn't matter what problem he's working on or she's working on. That is, I'll tell you my favorite example. One of my closest friends is a good, very good social psychologist named Lee Ross. Lee Ross, as a matter of fact, is the person who coined the phrase, the fundamental attribution error. He's a wonderful social psychologist. And he and I get together and talk a lot about education in social psychology. And one of the stories he told me was that when he was an undergraduate majoring in psychology at the University of Toronto in Canada, one of his professors, and he said he wanted to go to graduate school, one of his professors said, okay, if I were you, if I were a young man getting a degree right now and going on to graduate school, the person I would work with is Stanley Schachter. And so Lee Ross applied to Columbia University, where Schachter is, and he went to work with Schachter. He says, then he tells the story, he says, but when I got there, Stanley was working on obesity, about fat people. And I wasn't interested in fat people. Lee says to me, I'm not fat, none of my friends are fat, I'm not interested in fat. Why should I do research on fat? So he started to work with somebody else. But he noticed after a year or two of working with this other person, who was a perfectly reasonable psychologist, that he wasn't really passionate about his research. Lee wasn't passionate about the research he was doing. And he noticed that the people working with Stanley Schachter, the graduate students who were working with Stanley Schachter, were full of energy. And they were coming in to the laboratory late at night. And they were engaging each other in conversation about the research. And they were like as if they were on cocaine all the time. They weren't, but they were just full of passion. And he immediately switched over and worked with Schachter on obesity, even though he wasn't interested in obesity, because the important thing is to work with someone who gets you passionate about the process of doing research. That's the key. That's the key. Hegel once said, nothing important was ever accomplished without passion. I have that on a big card above my computer. So when I'm busily hacking away, every once in a while when I look up, I say, yeah, okay, and then I go to sleep because I'm not having passion right now, right? Nothing important was ever accomplished without passion. And the best way to get passionate is to work with someone who you like, whose style of research you like, who himself or herself is passionate about what they're doing. Otherwise, this wonderful field of ours, social psychology, becomes an exercise in boredom. And for anyone to be bored with this discipline is a tragedy. And yet, if you read the literature, if you read the journals in social psychology, you don't see a lot of passion there. You see a lot of people who are plodding through their research one step at a time, and it reads like they're not excited about what they're doing. So my guess, and this is my bias, I think that 95% of the important work in social psychology is being done by the 20% of the people who are truly passionate about their work. And your job as students is to hook up with one of those 20% who are passionate. And you will become passionate.